Hello everyone, welcome to today's editorial analysis. This session is dedicated to the editorial analysis from the Hindu as well as from the Indian Express. This is the initiative of AptiPlus and the entire initiative is powered by ISGAN. So before moving to the editorial analysis, I would like to inform about the initiative of answer writing challenge where you can participate. Every day 3 questions are posted on a website. You can post your answer and by 6 p.m. you will be getting the model answer by experts. So this will be where you can enhance your writing skill. Okay, so this is a complete value addition to your preparation. And aspirants who are looking forward to enroll for the mock test series, they can also enroll us. We have both online as well as offline courses. There will be 14 tests including the 8 sectional, 4 full length and 2 essay writing tests. For more details you can refer to the contact number mentioned below or you can visit to our website also. So starting the today's editorial analysis from the Hindu, the first editorial talk about the governing India through the fiscal path. So in this particular editorial, it talks about what should be the role of the fiscal deficit and what is the implication of it, what should be the revenue deficit and what are the implication of it. So we'll be having an in-depth analysis for this this editorial, and at the same time we'll be looking into the other trivial issues of that. So this will be an in-depth analysis. This will help you in general studies paper 3 where the economic sections are there and the revenue deficit, the budgets and all the things are there. So this can be important for the exam. Now the second editorial which is there in the Hindu, it talks about the history of the 5G dilemmas. So basically it has given the recent the war between the US and the China over the 5G. Basically what was happened, like US has banned Huawei in its country because of the other tussle. There are other technicalities on that, we'll not get into the details of that. So this is just giving a picture ki how that 5G dilemma is exactly working. So it says in this editorial, it postulates that in 1988 the American, when it's offered the supercomputer to India, it talks about 1980 when US has offered a supercomputer to India. So that computer was not at the par level of the excellence. Okay, they have just given us the older, slower generation of computers. Now at that point of time, what has happened? The government of India has come up with the NCP. NCP calls for National Computer Policy as well as Software Policy of 1986. So we have somewhere come down to the prices of computer as well. Now the recent talks in the G20 summit, Mr. Modi has also called that there should be a counter development. There should be collaborative and development of 5G technology for mutual benefit. Okay, so this is on the part of technological upgradation and the tussle between the national relation. So this can be important for your general studies paper 2 as well, general studies paper 2, and this can be also important for your paper 3 also, where the technology is science and technology part is there. Okay, so you can read it out, you can extract some of the important point also. Now talking about the editorial which is there in the Hindu, it talks about the time for the India and Pakistan to talk. See, basically it talks about the various breaches of the Simla agreement that could has come as a makeover to both India and Pakistan's relation, but it was not happened, it has not accordingly. And this editorial also talk about the role of the Clinton during the Kargil war. So definitely you can read this. This is a pretty historical background which is being mentioned in this editorial. Now the other editorial which is there in the Hindu talks about the dialogues of the divide. So see, in this editorial it talks about how the Hindu open houses it talks about the free exchange between the readers and the senior editors. See, what it also has given the picture about the Naimer reports where it explored the idea of the dialogue journalism. Okay, and the title was, can dialogue journalism be engaged with audience, foster civil discourse and increase the trust of medias? So this can be also important when it talks about the liberty of and the media person as such. So you can definitely read this, extract some of the important point, the important fodder point which can be relevant for the examination. Now the last in the editorial section is is like respecting reproductive choice. So this talks about the first the foremost, we have also made the editorial in this, आप उसको रेफर कर सकते हैं. हमारी वीडियो सेशन में हमने इसको काफ़ी अच्छे से एनालाइज किया था सरोगेसी बिल को. सो यू कैन रेफर टू आवर वेबसाइट यूट्यूब चैनल एंड देयर यू कैन सी इन द डिटेल्स वी हैव एनालाइज्ड इट विद ऑल रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ द एग्जामिनेशन. सो यहाँ पे बात की गई है जो रेगुलेशन ऑफ कमर्शियल सरोगेसी को रेगुलेट किया जाए rather than make it into the blanket, okay, and how we can come forward with, and despite the fact we do not undermine the reproductive right as well. So this would be again important, and I will not get into the details of that because I have already made a video. Okay, you please refer that video. It's indeed a very helpful video for you. Now moving to the editorial from the Indian Express. So there are some important editorial which definitely you need to read. So the first editorial talks about the three prime minister, that is from the Modi, Trump and Bolsonaro. So it talks about how the three countries have, the US, Brazil and India has come across, the democracy has ruled, and how it can further, the constraints of democracy. So it's a bit of philosophical as well. If you want, you can read it. Now the second editorial talks about the divide in the patriarchy. Okay, it talks about the masculinity and how the gender inequality is there. Okay, so I feel this would not be that relevant for your examination. Fine, so you can definitely sift from this editorial. And the second, the other editorial on the other page, it is basically the ideas page. So it talks about the Iran military action and the silence of America. Okay, so the tussles between the Iran and US. So this is on the part of international relations where India also need to take its stakes. Precisely, we are also concerned with the oil imports with Iran, so that can be a part of it. So you can have some important point for India, but these mostly talk about the US and Iran. So we'll be not considering this as important. The other part, the other report which is there in the editorial page talks about the digital identification parade. So this is on the background of that NCRB, the National Crime Record Bureau, has proposed the automated facial recognition system. Okay, and the point is that because of this, the concerned stakeholders has given that right to privacy do not hamper. Okay, so this would be again important when it talks about the right of privacy. I mean GS paper 2 as well as general studies paper 3. So this can be important there. So this is the wholesome idea about the both of the paper. Now we'll be getting into the detail of the editorial from the Hindu, where it talks about the governing India through the physical path. So this is by P. Balakrishnan. He is a professor of economics at Asoka University and senior fellow at IIM Kozhikode. So it talks about what should be a focus of the fiscal deficit reduction along is in the sound management of the sound economic management. Okay, and the revenue deficit must be in picture. I mean you cannot ignore that. So we will have the trivial points from this editorial, and we'll have the in-depth analysis. So starting and looking forward with the important aspects of this editorial. So the first and foremost, this is basically the talking about the balances between the revenue deficit and the fiscal deficits. Okay, so it talks about what is the fiscal discipline basically. So the fiscal discipline is basically what has happened in 1920 when the budget was presented. A predecessor finance minister has remarked that the financial prudence reward economics. I mean it was by the previous finance minister, not the financial prudence reward economics. So what is the financial prudence? See, basically it is the spending within the budget. The spending within the budget is called fiscal prudence. Okay, so fiscal prudence is basically it means when the expenses are according to the planned expenditure. When the expenses are meet according to the planned expenditure and your budget does not suffer a deficit. जब आपकी बजट को कहीं से भी किसी भी तरह से कोई डेफिसिट का सामना नहीं करना पड़ता. सो दैट इज कॉल्ड अ फिस्कल प्रूडेंस. ओके, नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट द कंसर्न ऑफ द साइज ऑफ द फिजिकल डेफिसिट. सो डेफिनेटली व्हाट वाज बीइंग कॉल्ड लाइक द फिजिकल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी, FRBM, fiscal responsibility budget management. Okay, it was there. You must be knowing, people who are preparing seriously, they must be knowing that FRBM. So इसमें काफ़ी amendment भी आई. तो 2003 the time was when it was enacted, and it has come to the political radars, and finally it has given a shape since 2014 as well. So how the physical discipline can be a cure. It can be just taken a way forward through Fiscal Responsibility Budget FRBM Act. Okay, this is a bill, now it has been completely enacted. Now, what was the projection from the budget 1920? Basically, it has given a picture that the fiscal deficit projected is marginally lower than earlier. Before, what was there? It was been projected that it would be a pretty lower. Now, the revenue deficit is also projected to rise. So, this is again a cause of concern. The revenue deficit is projected to be on a higher side. Now, the revenue deficit of the total government is relatively higher than virtually it existed in the 1980s. जो पहले हुआ करता था 1980s, it was not that high as such. Okay, previously the government do not need to focus on the in that revenue deficit part, because these things doesn't existed during the 1980s. So this is I'm telling because it is there in the editorial, so it has given a picture. So before proceeding with the what is a fiscal deficit and what is revenue deficit, I would just like to explain, because some of you must be in confusion कि होता क्या है, fiscal deficit क्या है, revenue deficit क्या है. So just to understand कि what are the basics of it. So the basic of the fiscal deficit, the meaning is that कि it is a difference between the total revenue, जो total revenue है, and the total expenditure of the government, जो दोनों का जो difference है, excluding borrowing. Okay, this again can be important for your prelims examination. So इसको आप याद रखना. So this can be important for prelims as well कि जो total revenue है and the total expenditure. Okay, the difference between that. And the revenue deficit क्या है? The result when the revenue receipts are less than the revenue expenditure. Okay, the revenue receipts are less than the revenue expenditure. Now, what are the indicators of the fiscal deficit? The first indicator is that it is an indicator of the total saving needed by the government. Okay, it is basically it is the needed for the total borrowing. This is the total borrowing needed by the government. Okay, and it indicates the dependency over the loan in the near future. So indicates how much we gonna borrow from the other parts. Okay, so this indicates a dependency. So this would be, I'm making it more simpler for you so that you do not get confused. Now, what are the situation what it arises? So it arises likely due to the higher capital expenditure. It calls for higher capital expenditure, and it arises when it arises. I mean, basically it talks about which is the situation when it arises. So it arises when the government actual net receipts are lower than the projected receipts. Okay, this is a case when fiscal deficit as well as the revenue deficit arises. Okay, so hope you have understand what is the difference and what are the indicators, what leads to the fiscal deficit and revenue deficit. Now moving ahead, the implication of the fiscal discipline. So basically the fiscal discipline is understood as taking the economy towards, the fiscal deficit, in the talk it talks about towards 3% of the gross domestic product. So again, if something is leading you to the backside, to the downfall, so it's again an implication for it. Now the fiscal deficit is a right indicator. It would be a right indicator of the fiscal soundness of the economy. अगर fiscal soundness of the economy की बात करें, तो fiscal discipline is a right indicators. Now the sound fiscal policy is highly desirable for an economy like India, where the volatility is trying to be on a sustainable path. So you definitely need to have a sound fiscal policy. Or fiscal deficit reflects the overall imbalance of the budget. What it do? It reflects the overall imbalances of the budget. Now talking about the fiscal deficit may or may not contain a deficit of the revenue. Further अगर उस तरह से वो अगर generate हो रहा है, तो that eventually can lead up to revenue deficit. Okay, now what exactly is the revenue deficit and what could be the indicators of the revenue deficit? See, the balance of the revenue deficit, that indicates whether the government is saving out its income or spending more on it, okay, than its receives, as I have discussed in the previous slides. So this is what the revenue deficit as an indicator talks about. Now the revenue deficit also implies that the government is dis-saving. There's no proper amount that the government can save. It is just investing. So it is a dis-saving. So what is happening, like in the broader picture, we cannot reduce the soundness of the economy management. We're not in a situation where we can manage the economy fairly, and it's merely reduction of the fiscal deficit. Okay. Now the steady revenue deficit as a fiscal deficit shrink, it's make the mockery of the fiscal consolidation. जब revenue deficit is going to be shrink, so what is happening as a fiscal deficit shrinks, it makes the mockery of the fiscal. जहाँ पे जिस path में we are looking forward to go for the fiscal consolidation, so it is basically not possible to achieve it. Okay. Now, what could be the implication of the revenue deficit? So the revenue deficits either can lead to the increase in the liability. Definitely it can increase through the liability in the form of borrowing, or reduce in the asset through the disinvestment. These can be the implications of the revenue deficit. Now, talking about the public debt, so it is only bound to rise. The public debt will be rising, and we'll be in a permanently situation to consume and leaving the future generation in the inherited of the debt. The future generation which is there will be in a situation where there will be only debt which is being remaining. So this would be again a very cause of concern. Now, what is, like, the editorial also talks about the international borrowing. So in the last budget, the government has signaled that the intention of borrowing the foreign currency from the international market. Okay, it has hinted that we can have the foreign currency borrowing. So what is happening, like, where the government has to go for a near borrowing from the international market? It has never did that. I mean, prior to that, only public sector organization and other private corporate used to do so. So in the budget, in the 17 this time, I mean the 17 Lok Sabha budget, the finance minister justified that moves in the term of very low share. I mean, it talks about that we'll be having a very low share of foreign debt to the GDP. Okay. Now this proposal was again been very criticized because some of its focuses on the consequences of the exchange rate volatility. This can again impingent into the exchange rate volatility. Okay, so this was on the part of international borrowing. So what could be the rational? How rational is the borrowing? See, basically, when the revenue deficit is overwhelming, okay, as a part of fiscal deficit, precisely about the fiscal deficit, we would borrow for the financial consumption. हम borrow कर सकते हैं सिर्फ financial consumptions के लिए. Now the dollar denominated sovereign debt जो है, I mean the dollar basically the dollar denominated sovereign bond or debt, it is the matter of shift from the borrowing overseas. It's a matter of shifting this to the borrowing side, and instead of taking from the domestic or other market, we are now making it more problematic for us. So if it is a dollar denominated sovereign debt, so this was on the part of borrowing, of the rationality of the borrowing. Now talking about the foreign exchange constraint, there are some foreign exchange reserve constraint which is also being there in the question. So the dollar denominated debt has to be repaid in the dollar. I mean, you cannot make the payment on the Indian rupees INR. You have to make the payment on the dollars. So again, the fiscal exchange, the reserve is going to be in a question. Now at present our reserve are fairly high, but it could change. I mean, if you are taking it as a dollar denominated debt, it would, I mean, you need to pay it. So something which is going from your reserve itself. Okay, so this could be on a this could be on a low side. Now the oil prices has been shift in a it has taken a shift again. It is increasing, and the trade war between the US and the India and other countries. So this would again be a problematic with as far as the foreign exchange are concerned. Now the portfolio investment may also outflow. This could subsequently can lead to also the portfolio investors getting outflow from the market as such. Now, what could be the way forward? What could be the way forward that we can move ahead? Now, talking about the, it is important that the government should pursue the sound economic policy. The government definitely need to maintain the sound economic policy where it could definitely have the management of the public finances. They need to have a management where the public finances are there, and at the same time maintaining the revenue deficit as well as the fiscal deficit. Now the government seriously need to take the steps to reduce the expenditure. How we can reduce the expenditure part and provide the unproductive and unnecessary expenditures. So we have to cut short this. Now the government should also increase its receipts from the various source of taxes and non-taxes. Okay, this could be the another way out. And talking about the balance of the fiscal deficit, I mean, if the country, if the nation, as the economy is trying to come to the fiscal consolidation, there need to be the balance of the fiscal deficit. Okay, and this would be very essential to make all the paths ahead, and this will not constrain into any of the economics policy as such. So this could be the possible way forward which you can include. And those who wanted whatever we have discussed, if you want there should be the notes of it, you can definitely refer to the description channel of the video. You will be getting the crisp note, whatever we have discussed. You can refer and you can make the notes of it. that would be important when you revise for the examination. So this by Mr. P. Balakrishnan was an important editorial which can help you out, and I have analyzed in the way that that could be, in a chronological manner, the content would be beneficial for your examination also. So this was from my part. Now you need to just work on it on yourself. You just read it out, revise well, and if you have any concern, just let us know. I'll be more than happy to answer your queries. Wish you all the best. Keep your work hard. Keep rocking. Thank you.